Welcome. This is the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for Representatives for Legislative District 39. This legislative district encompasses most of rural eastern Snohomish and Skagit counties and now includes Lake Stevens. I am your moderator, League member Nadine Shanti. Candidates for State Legislative District 39 Representative Position 1 are Sam Lowe and Robert Sutherland. Candidates for Representative Position 2 are Carolyn Eslick and Jessica Wadhams. As always, the League has invited all candidates and all are joining us today. The League thanks these candidates for running for office, for their willingness to serve if elected, and for participating in this forum. We remind our viewers that the League is nonpartisan. Therefore, we neither endorse or oppose candidates or parties. We do educate and support voters and the election process in our communities. Rules for participation in this forum were sent ahead of time to all candidates, and they have agreed to engage in respectful communication throughout. Now, let me briefly explain our question and answer period rules, and then we can begin. Questions have not been shared. We thank all those community members who sent us recommendations about local issues. Each candidate will have either 60 or 90 seconds to respond. There is one question which asks for a simple yes or no response and will not be timed. I will state these changes clearly. We are using a countdown timer visible to all candidates, and time limits on answers will be strictly enforced. I will change the starting order of each question, rotating through all the candidates to ensure a random and fair sequence. The order for the first question will be Mr. Lowe, Mr. Sutherland, Ms. Eslick, and then Ms. Wadhams. So let's begin. The first question will be a 60-second response, and we will begin with Mr. Lowe. This is your question. What qualifications and experience make you a strong candidate for this position?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the League for sponsoring this forum. I've always brought a balanced approach to my role as an elected official, and my door will always be open to every person in the district. I've served successfully at the local level as a city council member in Lake Stevens, and for the past 6 years on the Snohomish County Council. I've run my own successful small business for a decade. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership. I've served my local community as president of our local Rotary Club. I've served as chair of the State Transportation Improvement Board. I'm on the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission, and I want to be your representative in Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, same question.
Hi, thanks for having me. My qualifications are, first of all, I was elected in 2018 as a state representative. So I've been serving in Olympia for 4 years now. There is a lot to learn when you're an elected official in this capacity, from writing bills, entering amendments. There's a lot of interaction with people that goes on throughout in session and during the interim. A big part of this job is getting out and meeting with people, finding out their concerns. I've done that. I've met with countless tens of thousands of people, hearing their concerns. And based on those concerns, I go back to Olympia, I write legislation, I introduce it, and down there, you just hope that it gets some traction, some support by the other legislators. There's literally thousands of pieces of legislation written by members down there, and there's just not enough time to get them all public hearings and passed. So a lot of bills, that's what we refer to as a lot of bills, will die on the vine.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. Ms. Eslick, same question. You're on mute, Ms. Eslick.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today. I always enjoy these forums. During the last 5 years as 39th District State Representative, and prior to that, I was mayor for the city of Sultan for almost 10 years. I've proven to be pragmatic and work with people to solve problems, regardless where the solutions come from. I've had a record of accomplishments for not only from my constituents, but for the people of Washington State. My experience in the children, youth, and family continues to be a big part of my work in Olympia. That also includes promoting the family resource centers in Washington State that I had a bill for a couple of years ago. And this is a community-based program and a single door entry for families to find services that they need. I am glad to be able to run again this year. I have got a lot of work that still needs to be done in the youth mental health, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. What qualifications and experience make you a strong candidate for this position?
Yes, thank you to the League for the opportunity for all of us to be here. My name is Jessica Wadhams, and I'm running for State Representative Position 2 in the 39th LD. I am currently the Training and Education Committee co-chair for the National Women's Political Caucus, as well as the co-founder for the Lake Stevens BIPOC and Allies Advocacy Group. I've spent a lot of years volunteering for Cocoon House, PTA, and Boys and Girls Club. And before that, I worked in sales management for close to 20 years. I believe my compassion for people and my drive to fight for them is really what makes me a great candidate for this position. I really want to work hard for the people of my district. And I know that with my own lived experience of many of the issues people face today, I can help really create legislation that will work for the people instead of against them. It's an honor to serve, and it's been my honor to meet so many great community members as I've been door knocking across Snohomish and Skagit County. And I look forward to meeting more of them and learning what I can do to be a leader for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Timer, please set the clock for 90 seconds, and we will continue with our second question, which goes first to Mr. Sutherland. What are your priorities for the next legislative session?
Yeah, that's always a tough one for me because there's a lot of priorities, but let me just off the top of my head, property taxes are too high. They've doubled over the last 10 years and people are struggling to pay their property taxes at a time where we have record surplus revenue. We're currently running a $4 billion annual surplus revenue, and we need to give some of that money back. So that's a top priority. Traffic congestion in the 39th, not just the 39th and elsewhere, is a top priority. I'm on the Transportation Committee, and that is something we're working as a team to try to mitigate. Let people get to work, get to their children to school, groceries, daycare in a timely fashion, and it's not acceptable right now. We've got to. That my timer says 39 seconds. I don't know if it's working or not. We've got to get back to undoing the terrible legislation that was passed in the last couple of sessions regarding our law enforcement community. We've tied their hands. They're almost unable to do their jobs. And so that is another top priority of mine. I was honored to be number 2 on the bill last session with Chairman of Public Safety Committee, Roger Goodman, where it did improve one of the terrible bills from 2 years ago. And so I'd like to continue down that path, working across the aisle and helping our law enforcement be able to do their job and protect our communities.
Thank you. Ms. Eslick, same question.
Thank you. The top priority right off the bat is making our families feel safe in their homes and their neighborhoods and on Main Street, and that is not happening. So I am supporting reversal of the laws that were put into place. And then the last couple of years, we have got to make sure that our felons are doing the time. And at this moment, the movement is to release people from prison and try to catch them before they're in that situation to be able to rehab and help them on a different career path. But it has not been working, and we need to make sure that if they do the crime, they do the time. The other priority this next year will be to continue my work with the youth and their mental and behavioral health issues, and making sure that we have a clear pathway for services. We are in the middle, the subcommittee that I'm on is called YAC. It is Youth Behavioral and Health Committee, and we are in the middle of prioritizing right now the projects that they need to find that pathway to services in a timely manner. We also need to lower our taxes. We're the only state that did not give back during the pandemic, and we must make sure that we have be able to help our constituents be able to pay their bills. And property taxes is huge, so we need to help them with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, same question. Ms. Wadhams?
Looks like her video is frozen.
Okay. Mr. Lowe, would you like to take this question now?
Sure. My priorities for the next legislative session is public safety. The Blake decision needs to be fixed. It's basically made drugs legal here in the state of Washington. And we need to get that addressed at the state legislature. And the police reform bills, those have not been fair to law-abiding citizens. And we need to make sure that the public safety things that have happened over the last 2 years get addressed and fixed appropriately. Nexus Transportation, we need to fix the transportation issues we have here in this district. Obviously, the biggest one in the district's the trestle. That needs to be addressed. It's about a $1.8 billion fix. We need to address Highway 20, Highway 522, where our southernmost residents in Sultan use. And then we also need property tax relief, especially for our seniors. I talk to seniors who are struggling to stay in their homes, and property tax relief is what is needed to keep them in their homes and to keep all of us in our homes. So those are my three priorities: public safety, transportation, property tax relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, the same question.
Yeah, so, education is a huge priority of mine. Most families can no longer afford to put their kids through college, and many times, even with a degree, their wages are below a livable wage. So I would really want to work with our union representatives to help expand access to things like apprenticeship programs and other non-traditional post-high school education options. I also really want to find funding solutions for our school districts, so that when things like levies fail, they often do in rural areas, our children don't suffer the consequences of those decisions. Another priority is the creation of more jobs with union representation, so that things like livable wages and workplace standards are valued and protected. Our workforce is what keeps us going around, and the people in it should really see the reflection of that importance in meaningful ways, like, amazing benefits, competitive wages, and, affordable retirement options. Because it's really time our workforce and their families were better supported and valued in our state and country. Another item is, homelessness. We've got so many people experiencing homelessness due to job loss, mental health, drug addiction, and that needs to be made a priority on many levels at the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes first to Ms. Eslick. What, if anything, should be done to mitigate concerns about climate change in Washington state? You're muted, Ms. Eslick.
Sorry. So last year, Representative Mary Dye presented and rolled out an environmental proposal called Outdoor Recreation Climate Adaptation. And that is about making sure that we have healthy forests and making sure that we're putting money back into maintaining our forests. We at the state level did issue $125 million for that purpose. And we hadn't done that kind of work for years, but now we did, but we don't have any long-term funding source to take care of that. But we know that the more trees that we have, the more carbon we have. So sequester the carbon at the fastest possible rate. I think this is a great sample of innovative working on climate change, and I would like to support this in the next legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, same question.
Yeah, there's kind of an old saying in labor that if you want to fix climate issues, make it someone's job. And so, I think it's really important that, our legislators are bringing together stakeholders from labor and environment to the table, so we can really look for long-term climate solutions that do create jobs while also protecting working families. By bringing these different perspectives into the conversation, we can really make decisions that address all of those that are most affected by potential new policies. I also believe we need to be holding large companies more accountable for their part in the climate crisis. I know last year our state put an extra emissions tax for large companies utilizing diesel trucks. I think this is a great start, and I would like to continue those types of efforts. I also support the state providing incentives when cities use greener development and infrastructure options. By doing this, we also enable our communities to do their part and be empowered to make further decisions that continue the progress needed. Lastly, I am supportive of amending the Growth Management Act to include climate initiatives and needs so that further city planning reflects our state's climate agenda and timeline. Ultimately, the 39th district really needs leadership that is committed to doing everything in its power to make effective progress on our climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe, your thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of times this comes down to the balance between jobs and things that we need to do in this area. I think from my perspective, it's all about looking for ways to incentivize, looking for ways to educate the community. Having lived and seen smog in Southern California in the late 80s and early 90s, I found it difficult to breathe, especially when outside exercising. And the air and emissions there is so much better now than when it was 30 years ago. I think much of it was getting rid of lead and gas. And so that has to do with, again, education and incentivizing people not to do that. Here in Snohomish County, we've made some reasonable changes at the council level, changes that don't cost jobs and hurt those in the labor market. And I think the public is okay with reasonable changes in this area going forward. And so I think going back to where I started on this, I think it's about incentivizing and educating. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, same question.
I think we're seeing some of the problems that are a result of one-party rule in this state. We're not efficient at taking care of our environment the way we should be. For instance, we're not managing our forests well. And so when the debris, the fuel, if you will, the wood fuel piles up and there is a lightning strike or a man-made incident where it causes a fire, we're seeing these fires larger and larger every year, which of course then just spews smoke and whatnot into our atmosphere. We see the traffic congestion. Certain vehicles will get 30, 40, 50 miles a gallon, but when they're sitting in traffic, stop and go traffic, they're not getting that. And this causes a great increase in the pollution that comes out of internal combustion engines. If we can open up the freeways and the highways, this will help mediate that. Our big cities, we know in the middle of summer, Seattle is 17 degrees warmer than its surrounding area. And when you start adding up city after city, Tacoma, Portland, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, when you start adding them all up around the world, these large cement steel cities where they've cut all their trees down, they haven't managed their cities very well. These are helping to increase the temperature of the earth. And we should be, as Rep. Eslick mentioned, we need to be planting more trees that can help mediate this problem.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Ms. Wadhams. What do you believe are the 3 best ideas for reducing the likelihood of violent firearm incidents in our state?
You said firearms, correct? Just want to make sure I heard that right. Okay. Yeah, so I think it's one of those issues that's extremely complex and doesn't necessarily have a one-size-all approach. ultimately, the highest number of gun deaths that we see across the country are due to suicide. And so I think that makes the need for extra resources and funding across the state for mental health access to be a large priority that we need to help tackle that. I also know that domestic violence is a huge piece of gun violence. So stricter repercussions for repeat offenders, making sure that they are not having access to guns or weapons of death. When we look at the numbers in 2020, we had a 35% increase in gun deaths across the country. So I am supportive of initiatives like care and storage laws that aim to really protect vulnerable parties like children and those struggling with mental health. And believe that we can make decisions that are common sense gun laws that protect those that are vulnerable and potential victims, while also not penalizing responsible and law-abiding gun owners. And I think that we can do that, and I think we can reach across the aisle and come to some agreements that make sense for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to prosecute fully those who commit crimes with firearms. That's a real big issue right now. It seems like the current legislators are okay with being soft on crime, and we need people who are going to be strong in making sure those who commit these crimes with firearms are prosecuted fully. When they get out early, they're right back to doing what they were doing before. It also goes along with those who are breaking into homes and they're stealing firearms. I think we need to do a better job of identifying those who are out stealing firearms, breaking into homes, and prosecuting them. Aside from prosecution, I think we need to invest. And by investing, I mean invest fully in mental health treatment, especially with our young people. We've seen over the last 2.5 years, our young people have really struggled through the pandemic and struggled with being at home and dealing with their teachers and their classmates online. And that's been a struggle to our kids. So invest fully in mental health treatment and tackle issues that lead people to commit suicide and go on these rampages. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Eslick, your thoughts?
Yes, well, definitely COVID has caused some increasing mental health problems for not only our adults, but our children, and suicide rates are up. And thank goodness that 988 went live on July 17th. That's a huge help for us on the suicide line. But I support the resource officers in schools. They're like the first line to be able to see what's going on. And there's been some discrepancy whether or not they are a good budget item, but I've lived that as mayor and thought even then, back then, it was a good thing that we should be doing. I've been working in the mental field now for the last 5 years, and it is a very complex, and the services and the resources that we have really stem down to workforce. And if we don't invite and recruit more people for mental health, behavioral health counselors, we're going to be in the same boat that we are for the last couple of years. So those are big issues. It is about education also, and making sure that our children understand that there's training available for them in learning about guns and rifles. It's just a big, huge issue, but taking the guns away is not the answer. It is education and training and making sure our kids get all the services they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, your thoughts?
Yeah, we have to spend more time and resources putting bad people with guns away. A very small number, relatively speaking, a small number of people that are just, for whatever reason, living a lifestyle that puts us all, the rest of us, in jeopardy. And yet too often when they are caught, the few that are caught, the prosecutors They plead down the sentences, and these people are back on the street way too soon. We need these people that are causing the trouble need to be put away. And I would like to see better correctional facilities helping to fix these people, for lack of a better word. When they get out, hopefully they can get out rehabilitated and not wanting to live a lifestyle like that. I've seen statistics where the more good people that have guns, the less violence there is, and the less gun violence there is. How many times have we seen? I can't remember the number off the top of my head. I think it's 3 million defensive gun use a year, which is preventing a bad person with a gun from committing a terrible crime. And behavioral health with our youth, these kids are taking these psych drugs that are, who knows what they're doing to them inside their minds, but they're going to school and they're taking out their frustration on their classmates. We've never seen this before in the history of our country. And we've never had the mental health problems that we have right now. So we need to address that.
Thank you. Timer, I would like for you to set the clock to 60 seconds. All of you address the issue of behavioral issues with gun violence. So if we could take 60 seconds to go a little deeper. Mr. Lowe, in your opinion, is there sufficient access to behavioral health care in Snohomish County and across the state of Washington? If yes, would you recommend any modifications to those programs? And if no, what would you prioritize to increase access?
Yeah, I think we're getting better in this area. Obviously, we've done some stuff with the Denny Youth Center and added 32 more treatment beds, but that's just a drop in the bucket to what is needed. And so we do need more facilities, more help for our young people and for those who are struggling in this area. And so we're doing better, but there's a lot more work that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, would you care to respond to this question now?
Yes.
Okay.
We have been lacking statewide in this area. In the last couple of sessions down in Olympia, billions and billions of dollars additional have been allocated and are being spent currently. So we are improving the situation in this area, and that needs to continue. I was in Everett today, Granite Falls the other day, and I see people walking on the streets that are clearly in need of help during crisis. And they're on their own. And God forbid they were to get a hold of a firearm, we would all be terribly unsafe. We could make the argument we're unsafe with them they're walking in the street, they're turning around. We have a lot of work yet to do, but I think we're on the right path. I think the trajectory is correct. We put a lot of resources into this. We need to keep going. We need more beds, and we need to be able to help not just the youth, but also the adults out there suffering.
Thank you. Ms. Eslick, same question.
Sure. No, we are not in a position at this moment to make sure that we've got the resources available. We've spent a lot of money. And when we have a criminal with mental illness, because of the mental illness, walking the streets and carrying a knife and attacking people. And then we finally get him to the judge, and the judge says it's time to go to Western. And then he sits in jail for 8 months because Western says we can't take him yet. And so I go down to Western State to investigate and figure out what's going on. And I find out they've got beds, they don't have the workforce. So again, it's about the workforce. We absolutely need to make sure that we have people that are interested in going into the counseling business and the mental health, the psych business. But also we need to make sure that we have peers that are have lived that life and willing to help make sure that they are certified and help during this time of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't believe that we have sufficient access to behavioral health care, and particularly in our more rural areas, which the 39th is largely comprised of. Oftentimes we see metropolitan areas being prioritized for services in that regard. And that needs to change. We need to see a more robust effort in those areas so that we can see a broader change, in that regard, as far as people being able to find the support that they need. Second to that, as a parent myself, I have a 13-year-old son, and COVID hit him pretty hard, and as it did many other, families and children. And I just know that having the mental health service or support, at his school level made a huge difference for him to be able to thrive in his classes. So I think that we need to be investing more in our education systems with mental health resources.
Thank you. We will have 90 seconds for this question, and it goes first to Mr. Sutherland. How would you propose to make housing or rent more affordable in our area?
That's a big one for me, and it's a top priority of mine as well. We've seen, I mentioned this earlier, we've seen our property taxes double over the last 10 years. I'm paying per month for property taxes what just a few years ago I used to pay for my mortgage in Spokane when I lived over there. I guess it was more than a few years ago with my Gonzaga days. The taxes we're paying are outrageous to just keep a roof over our head. I've introduced a bill in Olympia since my first session, and I've modified it each session to get better and better. My current bill that I have actually eliminates the state level property taxes. It eliminates them, and it uses the surplus funds that we've been seeing coming into Olympia from taxpayers. It doesn't cost a dime. We can eliminate state level property taxes. That will reduce a person's monthly mortgage. That'll reduce rents and make houses more affordable for those who are renting and can't qualify to get a mortgage. So that's a huge one for me. Another way we can help with housing affordability is by allowing people to build more single family homes. If you restrict the supply, then it tightens up and the prices rise. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're not building enough single family homes. And so we need to open up the supply, and that will help bring down the cost of housing.
Thank you. Ms. Eslick, same question.
Thank you. Well, there's several things that we can do. And one is we can continue looking at the zoning laws and allowing for more dense property housing in our local areas and in our rural areas. The ADUs, the accessible dwelling units that we allowed during COVID time, I think that needs to be pursued, to be able to add another unit onto your property for your mother-in-law or for your parents at this point would be very helpful. The other thing is, I just come across something that I have thought about for several years and found out that there's an organization called National Home Sharing, and it's actually an organization out of Vermont. They will come to your state and help set it up for you, and it is an actual database to connect people to people that are interested in sharing their home, not only to help pay the rent, but also to help share with the normal day-to-day living chores. So, there's just many different ways that we can handle this. And I think that those are just two simple ones. Simple, not simple, but, ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, your thoughts?
Yeah, so, obviously our housing prices are pretty skyrocketed, and I hear that across the board, and it is making its way up through Skagit County. And so it is something that we need to be looking at and addressing in this next session. I really think that we would see a lot of traction if we were to incentivize cities and communities to build more densely and to provide housing that is affordable and in line with the cost of living and inflation rates. Second to that, I am supportive of restrictions for rental increases and would like to see that rental increases are also factoring costs of living and inflation. Also, right now there's approximately 22,000 people and families that are homeless in Washington state. And so that, I think, is number one priority, is getting people housed. And I think the best way that we can do that is by partnering with organizations that are already doing a lot of that groundwork, and really figuring out what kind of solutions we can come up with that are more in line with the complexities of why families are unhoused at the moment. So jobs, drug addiction, mental health problems, those are all different issues as to why people find themselves in those positions. And so we need investment in those areas in order to solve it.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
I think the bigger question is, are we talking about affordable housing or attainable housing? My daughter and her husband earlier this year, they were excited to purchase their first home, but yet they struggled to find a home that they could afford. They both have good jobs. My daughter's a school teacher, her husband's an electrician, and they wanted to live in our community, and yet they had to. It was at the top of their limit to purchase a house, and they had to purchase the cheapest house in the whole entire city of Lake Stevens. So the cost to build housing is incredible. The fees, the sewer fees, the school fees, the building fees, and then on top of it, you put all these property taxes, which can be anywhere from an extra $500 to $1,000 a month, which is a struggle for those who are renting, because the property owners have to pay for those taxes, and a lot of times have to pay for the mortgage, and it just makes it really difficult to have affordable housing for renters. I talked about seniors earlier who already own their own housing. They want to live in their lifelong home, and they're being taxed right out of their own home. Here in Snohomish County, we did pass an ADU ordinance, and trying to make it easier for people to live on their property and have options for our young people or for our seniors. And so those are all things that we can take to the bank.
Thank you. This question is related to the previous question, and hopefully we can get some more ideas here. Ms. Eslick, what are your ideas for ensuring that sufficient infrastructure is built or planned for in surrounding areas to support proposed development?
I know that the biggest complaint that our land, our neighborhoods have is they believe that the developers aren't paying their fair share of the roads. And it certainly is understanding when I see 600 homes going on up less than 3 miles from where I live, and all this new traffic coming down to the main highway 2 is pretty devastating at times. I've been on the transportation committee since I started 5 years ago, and it has been a struggle to be able to negotiate the things that we need in our local 39th district. It has been, even though we had a good relationship, this last Zooming life really interfered with the outcomes for my district. We got very few projects in our budget for the next few years, and that's really disturbing to me. The only thing that we can do is to continue to negotiate and continue to stand up for what we need, and remembering that Highway 2 is really the recreation area for our Seattleite people. So it is important that we get expansion. And now with the forest fire that's going on as we speak, and the landslides that it's going to cause this winter, we'll be looking at Highway 2 very carefully during this legislature time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in our district, in line with what Representative Eslick just mentioned, because we're rural, we get ignored a lot, or we don't get the things that we're asking or demanding. And so I think that we need legislators that are going to be bulldogs for transportation advancement. I also really feel like we could do a better job with utilizing local employment, so we can see a continuous boost in local economies, and see that these jobs are getting done. Transportation and expansion of transportation really helps all of us. It helps boost our economy. It helps make sure that trade is happening. And ultimately, the 39th is growing and changing. And so it's no longer acceptable for our district to not get the funding that's needed and the attention that's needed for our infrastructure, particularly when it comes to repair and maintenance. So, it's about having champions for those things, partnering with the transportation committee, looking for solutions, but basically being a squeaky wheel. And ultimately, that's what your representatives need to be anyways, is really fighting for the things that are affecting all of us the most. So if elected, that's what I would be doing.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe, same question.
Yeah, obviously transportation has been a big issue here in the 39th district. The gateway to the 39th district for years has been Highway 522. And the state has frankly not been a good partner with us on that. We have a section that goes from 4 lanes, then it goes to 2 lanes for 3.5 miles, and then back to 4 lanes. And it's been like that for several decades now. And so when we talk about new development and development trying to pay for stuff, I think the state needs to be a better partner with us in making sure that we have the existing needs that have been a problem for decades taken care of. The next area is Highway 2. Highway 2 has been neglected and for 40 years now. And we have 2 lanes where we have about 4.5 to 5 million cars a year going east-west on 2 lanes. And, those plans are there. The bypasses are there. The bypass through Monroe is there. But we need to have better partnership in Olympia on these things. And, as we go north to the trestle and then Highway 20 and Highway 9, Highway 9 needs to be addressed also. And we have sections from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and those are a struggle too. So transportation's a priority. We have billions and billions of dollars here in the 39th district that need to be invested by the state. And I want to go to Olympia and fight for those dollars.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, thank you. I am in Olympia and I am fighting for these dollars. We were able to get a brand new police department here in Granite Falls. The previous one was an old VHS rental place. The ceiling was leaking, falling apart. There were gunshot holes from a drive-by shooting a few years ago. The place was a mess. We got funding for that. So at least on the law enforcement side and for the community, we have a nice new police department here in Granite Falls. Infrastructure as far as Boys and Girls Club, I brought money to help them because they're the ones that are taking care of our kids. I benefited from that myself with my 4 kids as we were raising them. But as Mr. Lowe said, traffic and traffic congestion on our highways is probably one of the biggest issues here in the 39th. There are a lot of issues, but that's one of the bigger ones. And simply, you're going to hear me say this over and over again. One-party rule in Olympia doesn't work very well. And we see the result of that. We're not putting the resources into Highway 2, 522, Highway 9, Highway 20, or the I-5, the trestle. We're just, when I spoke to the executive, the Snohomish County executive, about 2 years ago, Mr. Summers, I was talking to him about traffic congestion and relief, and he looked at me and he says, traffic congestion is a problem we can't fix. And frankly, that is an unacceptable answer to me.
Thank you. This question goes to Ms. Wadhams. So let's talk about taxes. Do you believe the taxing system in Washington state is equitable and sufficient to meet the needs of the state and local communities? If not, what changes would you propose?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really no secret that our state has had, a regressive system for years, and it absolutely needs reform. I really support things like the wealth tax and the estate tax, and believe that the ultra wealthy should really be paying their fair share. Working families, many times the same working families, making it possible for these individuals to be in the 1%, statistically get hit hardest in taxes. And it's really time that leadership puts that majority first when making decisions about taxation and inflation issues. If the 1% was taxed appropriately and the loopholes closed, we would be able to use these funds to tackle issues, a lot of the same issues that we're talking about even right now. Affordable housing, transportation improvements, education, the list goes on. But these are things that benefit us all, and are something that our communities desperately need help with. So having legislators working across the aisle, working together in partnership to figure out what kind of adjustments and reform we can make in our tax system is needed, particularly as we have come out of COVID and people are struggling so much to make ends meet. So they really need to be the focus of the decisions we're making when it comes to taxation and how we want to see that adjusted.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe, your thoughts?
Our state has a spending problem. I mean, that's really the issue here. Our state spends and spends and spends. And so that's led us to a taxing problem in this state. And we see every tax and fee put upon each person in the state, every home, and everybody's feeling the effect. And so we need to fix the problem, and the problem is a spending problem. We had a billions of dollars in projected tax surpluses this year, and yet the legislature didn't refund a single dime to those who could least afford to be taxed. And so we need to do a better job in this area. We need to help those that are struggling, and we need to provide property tax relief. Here in Snohomish County, we did a rainy day fund, which helped us when COVID hit, and helped us in not having to raise taxes during that time. As I've said, I feel like a broken record. Our seniors, they are losing their homes because of taxes. And these tax increases are coming from our legislature. And we can go back to the school fix, the McCleary decision, and that has made it the most difficult on the people who can least afford it. So we have a spending problem.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, your views?
It's funny, we talk about all the problems that we have in Washington State, with behavioral health, with poorer families trying to struggle each paycheck. I'm going to go right back to one party rule. The problems that we see in this state are a direct result of 40 years of one party rule. It's funny to hear people say we just need to go to Olympia and we need to work harder. Every problem that we've just talked about tonight can be fixed in one session because we have one party rule. If they wanted to fix it, they would fix it. The Democrats that are in the majority down in Olympia can pass anything they want to pass any day they want to pass it. Yet we see the increases of our gas taxes going up. Well, that hurts people that have limited incomes. We see our property taxes doubling. That hurts people that are barely able to make their mortgage. The lower end of our economic scale, the people that are struggling the most. These are the regressive taxes that we're talking about, but it's the one party that's causing this. It's causing the problem. They can fix it. They speak about it. They act like they want to help the poor with all these regressive taxes, but then they pile more taxes upon more taxes, which hurt the poor in this state. We need a different approach. Our voters in the state need to take a serious look at the one-party system and maybe try giving a different shot, different people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Eslick?
Yes, we do have a spending problem in Washington State. No, we don't need more taxes. Our budget last year was $64 billion for 7.5 million people in Washington State. That's outrageous. We needed to keep and give back some of that reserve that we got in the last couple of years, and we did not do it. We need to stop spending, period. Now we're looking at, the gas tax is, the gas per gallon is almost $5 a gallon. It's going up again. And by January 1, the cap and tax will go up 47 cents a gallon. So it will be $5.50 or more. And who does that hurt? It hurts every one of us. It is the supply that all the truckers are going to get chastised we are going to get it at the grocery store, and of course, we're going to get it at the gas station. And it hurts the poor family that's working the most. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have 60 seconds for the response to this question, and it goes first to Mr. Lowe. Would you support making any changes to existing state laws or the state constitution regarding access to abortion? Why or why not? And if yes, what changes would you propose?
So I've made it clear on the Dobbs decision that people on both sides of the issue are tired of judges and lawmakers making the decision. This decision is based on those who are currently in power. Washington state voters made the decision in 1991 with Initiative 120 on this particular topic. And so I want to make a promise to the voters that I will, as a legislator, continue to leave the decision on this topic to the voters. And any changes on this topic should come from the voters and not from the politicians.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I am a legislator, and as such, I'm a representative. I represent the people of the 39th Legislative District. I don't go down there to rule over them. I listen to my constituents best I can. Now, we have our hands tied by law. So our Constitution says we're allowed to do certain things, we're not allowed to do other things. And so you have to balance that. The populace, one certain time may want to do something in society that would be a violation of other people's rights. So as a legislator, I don't just listen to that and do that. I'm bound by law to not do that. Regarding abortion, it's a very controversial issue. It's a very personal issue. It's my hardest issue to explain how I would vote on this bill or that bill or support this legislation or whatnot, because I get the crossing. Well, I just realized I'm out of time.
Thank you. Ms. Eslick, your thoughts?
Thank you. Well, I am pro-life, with exceptions, of course. In my mind, incest and rape, those things need to be brought into the equation too. But frankly, the government needs to stay out of our bedroom. Frankly, this should not be a government issue. It has been made that, but Washington state voters have voted on what they want to see in that arena. I do not have any aspirations of changing any of that law. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams.
Yes, so I am very much pro-choice. I'm actually the only pro-choice candidate in my district. And it's a big reason as to why I decided to run. Our representatives in this district represent a party that is very steadfast in their agenda to dismantle access to abortion and reproductive health care. And even though Washington state continues to take the stance of pro-choice, it really comes down to the leadership. I don't need to be ambiguous in my language. I don't decide what makes sense for other people or what moral ground someone should or shouldn't be able to make decisions on behalf of their own bodies. And I believe that government has absolutely no authority as to what someone does with their own body. It's a private matter, it's a private decision. And I am very much willing to fight to make sure that that is protected at all costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now this is our yes or no question that we mentioned earlier, and it regards voting options. We're going to start with Mr. Sutherland. Remember that this one is not timed. This is a question. Do you support ranked choice voting as a voting option? And remember, this is yes or no.
No.
Ms. Eslick,
No.
Ms. Wadhams,
Yes.
Mr. Lowe.
No.
Thank you all. Okay, this is our last question for the forum. And I would like to set the timer, make sure the timer is set for 60 seconds. And the question goes first to Ms. Eslick. What additional issues or information would you like to bring to the attention of the community?
I think it's really important that community members and our citizens of Washington State pay more attention to what's going on in Olympia. The fact that we have Zoom for 2 years and the committee meetings are now we're able to Zoom in. There should be lots of times and choices to give testimony down at our committees. Very important. The most important thing that I leave with today is we are there. It's very easy for us to go down and make new laws, but they don't always get implemented. I found that out in 2 of my bills. So it's really important that I am back there to make sure that our youth mental health bills get implemented in the next year that we are down there in Olympia. We are also in the middle of changing the sentencing task, criminal sentencing grid for our folks that are in prison. And our citizens.
I'm sorry, Ms. Eslick.
Time?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Wadhams, same question.
Yeah, so I think I'd like to highlight public safety. I know it's been talked about a lot in this forum, and as the only Democrat running, I think it's important I mention it. You know, I agree with amending language in the existing bills that we have. They are ambiguous and they do make it hard for officers and first responders to be able to do their jobs effectively. I think that we need to be investing in a more community policing approach. This is something that I found in speaking with many officers that, you know, community policing is really what feels best for serving their communities and building trust between officers and citizens, which I think we can all agree has been severely fractured in the last several years, if not beyond. You know, we really do need our police. We do need our first responders. Defunding is not the option to make that happen. And we need to make sure that we're supporting them in every way that we can so they can do the best for their communities. I also encourage anyone listening to take a look at the legislative website and check voting records.
Thank you. Mr. Lowe.
Yeah, we need more effective leadership in Olympia for the 39th district, working on issues that matter to all of us. Issues like transportation. We need somebody who can be effective in negotiating across the aisle with those that have a different political leaning. We need leadership in Olympia that when there's a slide that happens or a fire or a community crisis, that they not only just represent us in Olympia, but that they show up and roll up their sleeves and show compassion to those who are struggling. We need somebody to represent us in Olympia that will address the Blake decision and so that we can stop being soft on crime and criminals. So those are the things that I'd like to bring to the attention of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Sutherland, your response.
Yeah, one thing I don't believe I've touched on tonight is education. Our children are our most precious resource. Now, we are spending a ton of money in our education system. It's doubled over the last, I think, 10 or 15 years. It's half of our entire budget. Yet we see too many schools failing our children. Test scores are down, behavioral health problems are up, suicides are up. We are failing too many of our kids. I'm on the College and Workforce Committee down in Olympia, and this is an issue near and dear to me. I raised 4 kids. My 4 kids are why I ran for office. I fear for their future here in Washington State for them because of all the problems that we've been discussing tonight. We need the funding, the education dollars to follow the child so the parents have an option to get out of a bad and failing school and put their kid in a good educational environment. We need to fund our children, not our institutions.
Thank you. The League appreciates these candidates for joining us and for running for office. A recording of this forum and others will be available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website and YouTube channel. Find links at lwvsnoho.org. We encourage you to explore additional information for these and all candidates. The Snohomish County voter pamphlet will be mailed to residences starting October 8th. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, is another good source for nonpartisan voting information. Ballots will be mailed on October 20th and Election Day is November 8th. Please be a voter. This concludes our candidate forum. Thank you.